Well, Tamanna, what I'm picking up from my sources right now is that Vistara is going to borrow first officers effectively from Air India to fill in the gaps that Vistara has been facing after the first officers have been calling sick due to the new pay cuts and the new pay structure that they are trying to introduce. Now, what it essentially means here is that if first officers are coming to Vistara to resolve the entire issue, these first officers will have to go through a mandatory training of 40 days. Now, this training of 40 days will include their training of their ground training, and as well as it will be followed by the other trainings which will essentially become a training module of 40 days. Now, after this, one more point that needs to be highlighted here is that Air India itself is dealing with a crisis of first officers right now. They have been flying on a one-way command is what my sources are telling me. Now, what is one-way command? One-way command here means that the Air India cockpit is being handled by two captains. Now, when there are two captains flying in aircraft for Air India, how are they possibly sending first officers on deputation to Vistara to handle their operations? There are a lot of alarms here. Back to you, Tamanna.
All right. So how will they handle it is the question. Now, remember, a few days ago, the unions of other Tata Airlines also altogether wrote to the chairman saying that this is not just a Vistara problem, it's a larger problem. Now, before we get to our experts and try and understand what this larger problem is it just a question of who blinks first, or is it really about putting pilots under stress? I'm going to go across to my colleague Pragati Oberoi, who's been tracking this story very, very closely. This all started on 31st March, Pragati, and all of a sudden, in a span of 3 or 4 days, you had news that about 150 flights had been cancelled. Yeah. What happened since then, and has there been enough clarity from Vistara on what the issue is?
Tamanna, you're absolutely right. While the issue was brewing in mid-March itself, it's very interesting how it started expanding, and all the activity from the management side and the pilot side and the union side happened in last week of April, which is like the previous week or the first week of April. While passengers were complaining of flight cancellations in the end of March itself, and not just cancellation, delays as well. So basically, a lot of adjustments on Vistara's part in the flight operations. All that answers coming from the management all started after the Ministry of Civil Aviation stepped in. So let me bring in some context for our viewers, and they can see it on our screens as well, what the timeline of events has been. And all the action has happened in last 4-5 days. So while towards the end of March, flight adjustments started happening, on 2nd April was the time when Ministry of Civil Aviation stepped in, asking answers from Vistara as to what were the reasons of changes in the schedules of the flights, and how were they compensating the pilots and the passengers as to whatever was blowing out. Next, that was the first official communication that we got to know from our sources. On 3rd April, Vistara CEO was addressing the pilots in a town hall, and that was obviously reported exclusively by NDTV Profit first in the afternoon, that Vistara CEO spoke to the pilots, asked them what their queries was, and assured them that there will be answers given to them. Now, come to 4th April, we are seeing more reaction from pilot unions as well, that 2 pilot unions are now writing to Tata Group chairperson as well, and are saying that there is a larger issue at play in Tata Group Airlines. So clearly their saying was that the issue is not just about Vistara. While Vistara pilots' demands are very valid, there are issues extending to other airlines as well.
So I just want to understand this clearly. Through all of this, because I've seen the public sort of statements coming in from Vistara, and we're showing those on your screen as well. You've reported on the town hall. At any point, is the management saying that, okay, we understand that you're not happy to accept essentially a drop in minimum flying hours? Because that's the core of the issue which is going on, right? Is that being acknowledged? Is that being talked about?
So, Tamanna, whatever my understanding has been and what statements, official statements that we have from Vistara so far, not in absolute words or maybe not verbatim, but yes, the management has said in simple words, that to the pilots, that we understand your concerns and we will address them. If the concerns are about the flying hours, the rostering, the pay, they haven't specified them per se. But yes, at some places, the management has definitely said that we understand pilots' concerns. We understand that there are rostering issues, there are flight.
What do you mean by rostering issues?
So rostering issues, what we have understood from our sources is that pilots are being made to fly more hours than it is accepted. While we haven't heard officially from Vistara on that, let me be very clear about it. We did send some queries to Vistara on different days depending on the developments we were getting, but we did not hear back. So whatever pilots and other sources have communicated to us, that while the allotted time is supposed to be around 70 hours a month, there were times when pilots were flying more than that. So there were some instances also where pilots were saying that yes, there are pilots, but they were not able to understand as to why they were not being called for duty.
Okay, okay, as I understand it, let's put this simply. There are some pilots who are flying too much, and there are others who are not making the minimum cut.
Yeah, that's the understanding that we got from our sources.
All right.
Yeah.
So both conditions are a problem, because if there's a pilot which is being over-rostered or who is being over-rostered, that could be a safety hazard.